All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else? And the video I'm bringing you today, uh, I stumbled onto the forums yesterday. I normally don't go on there a whole lot. I just don't. But I found this, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It was the Eso Pvp Tier List as of their beginning of Dragonhold. They posted this in October. Dragonhold came out in October, so this is probably their compiled list from initial testing and all those sorts of things, and their thoughts on the classes. It wasn't just one person that did this. It wasn't one person that did this. It was compiled. It was a compiled list created by multiple people. 10 plus experienced PvPers, a lot of which I respect and look to their builds and their playstyle for guidance sometimes when I'm having a hard time with classes myself. So, it's not just one person making stuff up. It's not, it's people compiling things. But we have more information now. That was in October. We have 2.5 months of PvP. Obviously metas change over time. People build different ways. And so what we thought was initially, think about where you were the first week of Scalebreaker compared to the last week of Scalebreaker. Like as far as your builds go. You were probably confused as shit. You thought one class sucked, and then all of a sudden you figured something out, and then it was great, because it was such a drastic patch. So this patch, very similar. My point is we have more information now, and so I disagree with some of this list. I thought it'd be fun to compile my own list, and go off of what I think. And now, obviously, this is just my opinion, guys. I'm not saying that these guys are bad or wrong or anything like that. A lot of these guys are European players. Different patches and different servers have different types of players. So different PvP environments. Maybe on Xbox NA, there's a very large community that I fight against, and I fight really outnumbered. If you're fighting more small scale, like if you're going into Latvalon and you're fighting typically 2v3, 2v4, 2v5, 1v4 or 1v3, you have those smaller fights, you're going to have a different opinion than me. If you duel a lot, you're going to have a way different opinion than me. So let's just understand that we're all different players. We all play different, although we all play PvP, we have different aspects of it. If you're in BGs, you're going to have a completely different viewpoint on where I'm at as well. So these are my thoughts. This is how I would rank them. And keep in mind, I currently play everything but Magic and Necromancer. I play minimal Magdon, but I do still play some Magical Warden. But Magical Warden and Magic and Necromancer are my two least played classes. I don't play them a lot. I don't. Magic Necromancer, I'm leveling right now. I'm getting skill points and mount speed, and I don't want anybody killing me while I'm on my mount. So we're gonna have to wait maybe a month for that. But yeah. So with that being said, let's dive into it. They have it split up here. They have solo play, they have small scale, and they have large scale PvP. So each class and how they function functions differently in each environment, which I completely agree with, and I more or less agree with their tiers. I'm going to switch a few around, but yeah. So this is the solo play. So they base it off of how they can sustain, survive, and handle multiple players outnumbered versus having the tools to fight somebody 1v1. Right now, if you guys don't know, this little bear thing in green, that's Stamina Warden and Stamina Nightblade. So they have Stamina Warden and Stamina Nightblade as S tier. I agree with Stamina Warden. Stamina Warden is S tier because they have basically just about every major and minor buff in the book. They have access to minor vulnerability, minor berserk. They have access to major mending. They have access to major heroism. They have a lot of major buffs. And on top of that, they also have access to hard-hitting damage abilities that can coincide with other hard-hitting damage abilities. So your Subterranean Assault is a ground-based AoE that can hit multiple people, does a ton of damage, and you can line that up with an ultimate. You can line that up with a D-Swing. You can line that up with Spin to Win. Multiple different things to dish out a bunch of damage at the same time to finish off a lot of opponents. Oftentimes in a 1vx, being able to eliminate players quickly is what is going to win the X for you. And Stamden has it in spades. They're very powerful in that regard. You can take out 2, 3, 4 people really quickly if you turn and burn them. Stamina Nightblade has traditionally been S tier, and so I understand people's thoughts that it belongs up here. I disagree. It's not bad. It's definitely not bad. And the reason it's not bad is because of Cloak, because of Shadow Image. Their survivability is top notch. You know, their ability to negate incoming damage via Cloak and via just escapability and survivability is, you know, it's one of the best in the game. You know, there's only one other class that rivals the survivability of a Nightblade. So in that way, yes, they are good. In another way, the way you currently have to build them leaves you kind of at a loss for dealing with block casting high healing groups. You know, like with a Stamden, you have more AoE burst, and you can potentially take out a few people even if they had healers. Nightblade's all single target. And because of their delayed abilities with their incapacitating strike and their spectral bow or an onslaught, you know, you have a cast time on your ultimate, and then you have the travel time on the bow. Because of that delayed travel time and the increased healing this patch, your burst just isn't as reliable on a Stamina Nightblade as it used to be. You used to be able to just animation cancel an ult and then go right into your bow, and, you know, like, if that still existed, yes, Stamina Nightblade S tier. But because of that delay, because you can sneak in a 3, 4, 5k rapid regeneration, or you know, the lower end of those numbers like 2, 3, 4k extended ritual, 3, 4, 5k vigor, you know, those sorts of things. Because you can sneak those in between these abilities, you often don't finish your opponents as reliably as another class can. And so, once again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just not saying it's S tier. So I'm going to drop Stamina Nightblade down. And I am going to bring Stamplar up. I think Stamplar belongs in the S tier. They have very high healing. Their sustain is very good. They have access to some of the best bursts in the game. We all know about Biting Jabs. Biting Jabs does a ton of damage. Power of the Light can crit. You combine Power of the Light with Onslaught, which is what I talked about before with Burst. Power of the Light plus Onslaught exploding at the same time creates very high burst that can nuke just about anybody. And so that's what you need in PvP right now. You need multiple damage combinations that can land at or around the same time in order to finish opponents off quickly. And Stamplar has it. Plus, they have healing. They have access to Purify. They can be mobile. They can be tanky. They have a very nice toolkit. So I would put Stamplar in the S tier. I also, and I might get some flack for this, but I'm going to provide my point of view. I would put Stamina Necromancer in the S tier. Now, some people believe that Stamina Necromancer isn't very good because of Blast Bones. I've been talking about Stamina Necromancer for like the last 2 months about how it's a very good class. Even with the delay on Blast Bones, we can't deny how effective the class is when, even though Blast Bones lands maybe 30 to 50% of the time, it's still one of the most effective classes in open world PvP from a solo perspective, because Blast Bones can land the same time as our D-Swing, same time as our Onslaught, the same time as our Ultimate. Not only does it do a ton of damage, but it also defiles. And so in a high healing meta, having a high damage burst ability that also provides major defile allows us to finish multiple targets. I have nuked a 35k health tank that wasn't blocking with a D-Swing, Blast Bones, Onslaught, Executioner. I killed him in a matter of like 2 seconds with just that combination. I hit the D-Swing, Blast Bones hit, Medium Weave, Onslaught, Executioner. 35k health to 0 because he didn't CC break immediately. That's the power that Stamina Necromancer has. It's very similar to Stamina Warden as far as burst ability, but if you don't finish them right away, you have them defiled and they're having a hard time recovering. They're also very tanky. Necromancer is probably the tankiest class in the game. The only thing Necromancer does not have is good sustain, and they changed that this patch. The reusable parts is a lot better. You don't need as much sustain as I was running in Scalebreaker. I mean, you need a little bit more than most classes, but you know, when you have the burst of a Necromancer and you have the tankiness of a Necromancer, you can build and sustain pretty easily. You know, they have a lot of things going for them. They also have access to major vulnerability, which isn't as good in the solo play environment, but especially for a Stam class, but it's there. You know, you can do major vulnerability, Blast Bone, Spin to Win. Like there's multiple different ways to play Stamina Necromancer effectively. Severely outnumbered, and that's why Stamina Necromancer belongs in the S tier. So you're noticing Stamina classes. We got Stamplar, Stamden, Stamina Necromancer, and in my opinion, Stam DK. I think Stam DK also belongs in the S tier. I think they're very good. And the main reason I think they're very good is because Dragon Leap hits so hard. We also have access to Noxious Breath. My Noxious Breath has like a 10 to 11k tooltip if I remember correctly. So it's an AoE major fracture that does a ton of damage. We can build a bunch of damage out of DK because we have high healing. We have access to major mending. The more damage we build on a stam DK, the better our vigor heals are. So although we could take more damage in medium-based specs, we can have very high vigor tooltips. We can have very high rally tooltips with major mending that allow us to pop back up to full rather quickly. We also have access to one of the best burst ultimates in the game, which is Dragon Leap. I have a 30k tooltip on mine. I've hit a Dragon Leap for as high as 22,000 on my build. So just that ability to instant delete a few people, because it's an AoE, you can potentially take out 2 or 3 people at the same time. You know, and I've done that before. That quick burst ability is what makes Dragon Knight so powerful. And I know some people are going to be like, well, they don't have the same lineup of burst as Stamplar or Stamden or Stamina Necromancer. And I agree with you. You know, they don't have that 2-hit combo that lands as well. But, you know, when you can stack so much damage with minimal recovery due to Battle Roar passives, because you can have those sorts of things, and because you can stack your leap so high with the access to Major Fracture, which is, you know, you can do pretty good damage with Fracture or D-Swing, Medium Weave, Leap, Execute. Like, maybe they're not as good, maybe they're not full S tier as the other 3 classes that I mentioned, but they're at least S- and in the A tier. They hit very hard. They have access to high burst, you know, and being squishy is not really an issue because their healing is so good. So I would definitely put them in the S- range. If you wanted to say that they're not as good as Stamplar or Stamden or Stamina Necromancer, I can get behind that, but I still think that they're one of the best classes for 1v-Hexagon. And I don't think I'm particularly good at 2H and bow on a Stamina DK, and I felt really good playing it. So I played it for quite a bit, and you know, it was very, very powerful. So that's how I would rank it. I have 4 stamina classes in the S tier for solo PvP. No magic classes. We'll get into that, but we have an A tier. We have Magicka Nightblade. We already put Stamplar up. We have Magicka Sork, and we have Stamina Sork that they put in the A tier. Well, I'm gonna disagree with Magicka Nightblade. You know, I get the reasoning behind why they put them here at the beginning of Dragonhold. You know, the addition of rapid regen, as well as, you know, snares not being as effective makes Magicka Nightblade a little bit better. They lowered the cast time on the travel time on Spectral Bow, which made them all a lot better. So it makes sense that they put them here, but in an applicable environment where you actually play the class, you still have too long of a delay between your Soul Harvest and your Spectral Bow to land. You also don't really have AoE cleave with traditional Magicka Nightblade builds. Yes, you can run Soul Tether, and Soul Tether is a nice AoE ultimate, but you don't have an AoE follow-up. You know, you don't have an AoE follow-up with Tether to where you can just do a bunch of burst damage. You know, like Stamden, if you're in Dawnbreaker, you have sub and Dawnbreaker. You know, you have your ultimate, and you have another hard-hitting AoE ultimate that can take out multiple people. With a Nightblade, you have either Soul Harvest or Soul Tether. And Soul Tether's AoE, it hits very hard, it's very good. But your follow-up is Spectral Bow. You know, and it's not bad. You know, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's single target. And so single target has its own issues, it being dodgeable, it being slow to land, those sorts of things. It's not as reliable as an AoE ground-based thing. It doesn't hit multiple people, so you won't get those, you know, random 2 kills or 3 kills that you could on a Stamden or a Stamina Necromancer. You know, so you're more single target. Because you're single target, you need that burst to line up. And in this game right now, with healing the way it is, it's just not lining up consistently enough to put it in the A tier. You know, I think they're missing one thing, and I've talked about it before. If they had a burst heal and you could take 1 hot off their bar, and you could you know, slot Inner Light or Execute or something like that, just one more thing, then we could start talking about Magicka Nightblade being in the A tier. But the way they're currently constructed, I'm not talking shit to Magicka Nightblades. I've played it. I'm not too worried when I see a Magicka Nightblade in open world PvP. I know they're going to be tanky. I know they're going to be a little bit tough to kill, but their burst is so slow. You know, once the fear comes, I just have to, you know, either block, CC break block, or CC break dodge roll, and I'm not, you know, that Spectral Bow is not doing anything to me. So that's just how I feel in general across fighting multiple different Magic Nightblades. There's obviously some really good ones out there. So if you guys are going to say, hey, I X on a Magic Nightblade, what the hell are you talking about? Congratulations, you're a really good Magic Nightblade. You know, not many people are doing it. Tip my hat to you, sir. Well done. Or madam, I'm sorry. Sorry if you're 1vxing on a Magic Nightblade, you're a boss. So that's how I put it. Magic-Sorc in the A tier. So I don't think Magic-Sorcerer is bad. You know, they have access, you know, AoE Streak, AoE CC, Streak is an AoE CC. They also have access, you know, they reduce the amount of cost increase on Streak so that you can move, you can streak a lot more now. And so if you find a fight that's not desirable for you, you can streak, I think I get streak 7 times now. You know, it's old 1.6 or 1.5 level Sorc streaks where you could just like get across the map, get your stuff back, and if anybody chases you down, they're out of resources at that point. So you also have access to Dark Conversion, which allows you to build more damage. You also have access to one of the best combinations in the game. Curse, Frag, Mage's Wrath, plus Ultimate is just such a nice combination of landing a bunch of different skills all at the same time to coincide bursts to kill people off. Like, all that's really good. On paper, it looks good. It looks like it belongs in the A tier. Magicka is just kind of underperforming compared to Stamina. So, although they do have the toolkit to survive the less damage per ability that Stam has, they're a little bit tougher. You know, they're tough to kill, but their burst is so predictable. I'm not having, you know, Magic-Sorc is not something that I'm really having a hard time dealing with. Now, in open world, if you want to say that they belong in the A tier because of their survivability, because of their kite ability toolkit and their ability to sustain, you know, when I see a Sorc, a pet Sorc or a normal Sorc, I normally ignore them because if I burst them to half health, I just know that they're going to streak away, they're going to dark deal, they're going to get around a tree and, you know, get all their stuff back. And then we're going to have to restart the fight all over again. If I do it again, they're going to do the exact same thing. And it's not really... most of my builds aren't equipped to deal with somebody with that type of escapability. And so I can't really deal with them. I'd rather stand my ground and fight. And, you know, if they're feeling that they might lose, they can get out. And so you have that escapability, which is nice. You have the burst ability. I mean, you can Curse, Frag, Mage's Wrath, Ultimate is very good. But I don't know. Like, I guess you put them in A tier. I mean, I guess you do, but they feel kind of bleh to me. You know, compared to Stamina class, they feel a little like you can absolutely 1vx with them. I guess they belong in this tier for that reason. But I would put them in like AA minus. I wouldn't put them in B, but I would say AA minus. I think the other two classes that I put in this tier are a little bit better. We have Stam-Sorc. Stam-Sorc, I completely agree, belongs in the A tier. I think they're very good, and I've talked about this in the past, but Stam-Sorc has access to some of the best utility skills in the game. And when you go to a meta like this, where it's a high burst meta, where you need a lot of weapon damage to kill people, that is a Stam-Sorc's wheelhouse, because they have the 10% more damage at people at 100% health. And so the more damage you have, the more that scales, the more effective your initial burst is going to be. Now, they don't have that lineup burst the way Stamplar, Stamden, or Stamcrow have. You know, you don't have multiple abilities. Well, you do if you run Bound Armaments. You know, and I've seen mixed reviews on Bound Armaments. I don't know how I still don't know how I feel about Bound Armaments, but you do have some of that capability. I'm not typically running it because I don't really need it. But D-Swing plus Onslaught with the amount of damage that you have as a Stam-Sorc is very effective. The main reason that they're so powerful, and the reason I put them in this tier, is because they can escape very well with Streak. They have access to great survivability via Dark Deal. Dark Deal is just such a powerful skill, allowing you to build more weapon damage, build more damage into your spec so that your D-Swing and your ultimates hit harder. My buddy's hit 19k Dawnbreakers on his medium armor Stam build. Stam-Sorc, you know, I'm running a heavy armor Stam-Sorc. You know, D-Swing Onslaught is just, you know, it's shredding people. The support plus the ability to stack in all this weapon damage is what makes Stam-Sorc so powerful. If all of a sudden we switch to a patch to where you know you need a defensive set to survive, Stam-Sorc drops down a tier or maybe even 2, because you're not building in that damage that, you know, there, there's no real loss to build weapon damage this patch. That's my point. There's no real loss, and because there's no loss of building weapon damage, that's Stamsork's wheelhouse. Crit Surge is very powerful. You run a couple dots, you're going to have high healing. You throw Caltrops on the ground, you have Crit Surge up. You're fighting 2 or 3 people. Your healing's going to go through the roof. Hurricane plus Crit Surge plus Caltrops is just ridiculous amounts of healing. So I think they firmly belong in the A tier. I do think for solo PvP they're a little bit better than Magsork this patch. I think they're a little bit better. I think Stam in general for solo PvP is a little bit better than Mag. That's just my opinion on it. They just have higher burst, and yeah. So I think Magsork is a precarious A. Stamsork is definitely an A. What else do we have here? Magplar. I don't think I'd put Magplar in the A tier. Magdk, no. Magden, no. Magcrow, no. This is where I'd put Stamblade. Stamblade I'd put in the A- tier as well. Previous open world beasts are just, they're not S tier anymore. They are A- tier. Stamina Nightblade's escapability, survivability is, the only class that matches it roughly is Magsork. But their burst is a little bit delayed. That's why I dropped them down a tier. So you could put Stamblade here in the AA- category. Their burst just doesn't line up as well to kill a bunch of people in the same way that those other classes can. And so from a solo perspective, that's where I put them there. Now, obviously, you have to encounter playing good players as well as potatoes. A well-played Stamina Nightblade against potatoes, they're just never really going to take much damage. Like if the group doesn't know how to deal with Cloak, you can even with the current state of Stam Nightblade, you can rattle off a 1v5 or a 1v6 because they're just never going to be able to pull you out of stealth, do anything to you, and you can just nuke them as it happens. So that's my opinion on Stamblade. I do think that they're underperforming compared to a lot of the other stamina classes. Their burst is kind of weird, but from a solo perspective, you're going to survive a lot, and because you can survive a lot, you're going to have access to windows to kill people. So that's why I put Stamina Nightblade in the A/A- tier. B tier. I think Magplar is firmly entrenched in the B tier for solo play. I don't think they're bad. If you look at it from a 1v1, 1v2 perspective, they have a lot of tools in their toolkit to kill people one-on-one. Dark Flare, sweeps hit very hard. Crescent Sweep is an amazing ultimate. They have access to Radiant, all these sorts of things. They have good survivability via healing, through Extended Ritual, through the Bubble, through Honor the Dead, which is one of the best burst heals in the game. All those things make Magicka Templar in a 1v1, 1v2, 1v3 situation very powerful and very formidable. Where they're not as good as the other classes is their burst isn't as high as Stamplar's is. Traditionally they just don't have as much burst. And although they do have more healing, Magicka burst is just lower than Stamina burst this patch. That's why they're a lower tier. They don't have access to maneuverability the way a Stamplar does or a Stamina class does, in general. And so oftentimes you have to run a Vampire on a Magicka class to use the Mist form, which makes your survivability good. But it's a double-edged sword with Mist form. It allows you to get to spots to survive, but at the same time, you're not getting your resources back, so you have to build in a little bit more sustain. When you're building in a little bit more sustain, to compensate for Mist form, you miss out on some damage. Also, although Sweeps is AoE and Crescent is AoE, nothing else in their toolkit is really AoE. So you're not going to have that, like I've talked about before. You're not going to have the Wombo combo of a Stamden or Stamina Necromancer. You're not going to have that quick, I'm going to shit on you sort of thing. That's why Stam DK is higher. The leap just hits harder than Crescent does. You're not going to have those sorts of just like deletability. You can run bats and sweeps, and with a high damage spec, it is going to do a ton of damage, and that's why I kind of put them here. Their high healing is good, but their mobility puts them at a loss in a severely outnumbered fight. 1v1, they can kind of stand toe-to-toe with everybody, but when you start getting in the 1v3, 1v4, 1v5 situations, there's some tools in their toolkit that are a little lacking in that department. Namely, their Extended Ritual doesn't allow them to stand in it, and so you don't have access to that high healing you would normally have in a 1v1, 1v2 situation. So that's why I put Magicka Templar in the B tier for solo play. This is just for solo play. Don't bite my head off. Magden, I'd put solidly in the B tier as well. It's not that they're bad. you know, B. I mean, it's a B, guys. It's not that they're bad. You can absolutely 1vx with the Magden. Their healing is a lot better this patch via the Arctic, what is it? Arctic Wind, Polar Wind. Their healing is very good. They have access to that AoE, you know, Magicka sub plus Permafrost or plus Meteor. My buddies have hit some very high, hard-hitting meteors on a Warden, you know, 20k plus meteors. They don't have an, well, they do have an unblockable CC, but it's a little weird. So they have access to that quick delete. Their mobility is a little lacking sometimes. So that's why I'm putting them down a little bit lower. Although they do have an unblockable CC, it all hinges on whether or not somebody's right on top of you. So you can't really line up burst in the same way you can line up burst on other classes. You know, you have to hope that they're in your face or you're in their face, and you line it up with that. You can use, I mean, like all other magic tunes, you can use Vampire Drain, and Vampire Drain is going to work, but it's not unblockable, you know. So they're good, but they just have a few things holding them back. You know, if you're not going to kill somebody with your Permafrost and your sub and your Shock Clench, you know, you just don't really have many other tools. I mean, with the tools you need in your kit, you don't have some finishing power sometimes. So that's why I put them in the B tier with Magplar. I don't think they're bad. Like I said, I mean, they're B tier. They're not bad. What's we got here? Everything else is previously discussed. Finally, we have 3 classes left, and they're all Mag. We have Magblade, we have Mag DK, and we have Magicka Necromancer. I don't think any of them belong in the B tier. I mean, no, I don't think any of them belong in the B tier. You could argue that Mag DK belongs in this B minus tier. I think that's a decent. We'll go with that. Mag DK solo play B minus. They're just not. They're not super good. They don't have. Their sustain is pretty bad right now, and because their sustain is bad, you have to build in more sustain, which means that your burst isn't as optimal. You know, 1v1s. You know, they're always going to be an elite 1v1 class, you know, with how they're built. That's just kind of what they are. But in an open world outnumbered situation, your healing is lacking, you know, via coagulating blood compared to the other classes. Because your cost, like I said, because the cost of abilities is so high, you have to build in more sustain, you have to slam more coags, you have to have more sustain for, you know, your dots that aren't performing as well because you have to build in more sustain for them. And all that leads to less damage, less burst. And like I said, if you don't have burst in open world PvP, you're going to struggle. That's why I put them down here. You know, 1v1, 1v2, they're fine. You know, but it's when you get those 1v4, 1v5 situations where if you're pulling off a 1v5 on a Mag DK, you're probably pretty damn good. You know, like compared to these other classes, you know, some classes, the same 1v5, they wouldn't blink at the 1v5 that Mag DK struggle again. So that's just my opinion for solo play. Those are my thoughts. I put it in B minus. And then C, I put Magicka Nightblade and Magicka Necromancer firmly entrenched in C. And the reason is because, you know, solo play isn't just outnumbered. It isn't just severely outnumbered. It's also small scale, 1v1s, 1v2s, 1v3s. And in that situation, Magicka Nightblade has it has good survivability via Shadow Image. It has good survivability via rotating the billion hots that you have to rotate on their bar. And, you know, they do have access to Soul Harvest and Spectral Bow, which, you know, Defile plus an ultimate plus a bow, which isn't always easy to land. It's just missing something, you know, like that. That's why I put it as a C. It's okay. You're going to be able to 1vx with it, but just a little nudge in one direction, which I've talked about. Giving it a burst heal allows you to take 1 hot off the bar and either slot a skill like Inner Light or slot a skill like Execute. And all of a sudden, Magicka Nightblade goes from being a C to a B to maybe an A for 1vx situations. Just because of that one little change. You know, just that one change, allowing them to take a hot off their bar and put on another attack ability gives them that finishing power that they're desperately missing because it's all single target. Because it's single target, it's easy to avoid. That's why they're in the C tier. They're okay. Sometimes you'll get some funny kills. They're, you know, you can duel okay with them, but they're just not as good solo as the other classes. Magicka Necromancer. Some people are going to mock me for them being this low. Let me explain my point of view on this. They're very tanky, obviously. And yes, you have some very powerful burst running a solo Harmony build where you can activate the Graveyard Synergy plus Blast Bones plus Vulnerability ult. But the graveyard synergy is easy to see on the ground. Anybody that sees the Boneyard, if they know anything about magic and necromancers, they're not going to step into it. And so if you're trying to 1v1 somebody and they see that on the ground, they're not going to go into that space. They're not going to activate it. So a magic and necromancer for pug slaying is fantastic. You know, I've seen multiple clips where magic necromancer goes into a tower, 5 or 6 people come around the corner, he drops his Boneyard, activates a synergy, vulnerability, blast bones, all of them are dead. You know, 1v5 wiped out in a matter of 2 seconds. So in that way, they're very, very good for taking out large amounts of players. However, you know, like I said, people that know about the Boneyard synergy, you're just going to have a hard time killing them. You know, they're not going to walk into it a lot. And you have to really line up that synergy plus an ultimate plus a CC to keep them, make sure that they stay in there and they absorb the damage. And if you don't finish them on it, they're going to heal back to full because you don't have the dot power to really take them down. So once again, you know, they're not bad. They're in the C tier. You know, just one little adjustment would make them so much better in open world PvP, and it's reformatting their offensive toolkit a little bit so that they're more capable of dealing with opponents that know what your graveyard synergy is. So very similar to Magic and Nightblade. They're close. They have some things going for them, but they're just missing that little bit extra. You know, that's why I have them in the C tier. I don't think any class in the D tier this patch for solo PvP. I mean, I've seen people X on everything. You know, when I consider D tier or F tier, I consider like 2 years ago Magic and Dragonite. Magic Dragonite 2 years ago was absolute garbage. You know, when Defile was like 85% and your Coag wasn't healing for what it's healing for now, which is still not very good, you were in a shitty spot. Fighting outnumbered was rough. Rough to say the least. That's what I consider D tier. All right, so guys, in summation, here is my new edited, or my opinion, on the top tiers for solo play in PvP, counting outnumbered fights, counting survivability, burst, the ability to take out multiple targets at the same time, having tools in their toolkit to successfully be able to 1vx. I don't think any class is really bad for 1vx PvP, for solo, outnumbered PvP, but I do think Stamina Templar, Stamina Warden, Stamina Necromancer, and Stamina Dragonite are in the S tier. Stam Nightblade, Magigosaurk, and Stamina Sork are in the A tier due to just slightly lack of burst, but they have their toolkits are better for survivability and being able to kite around and sustain and survive long enough to get off those bursts. So that's why I put them in the A tier. Magsork and Magden do not have that sort of kite ability and survivability, but they have pretty good burst in their toolkit as well as powerful healing. I don't think healing through damage is as valuable as voiding damage the way the other classes can, so I put them down a tier lower than the other ones. And then finally in our bottom tier, I put Mag DK slightly above Magic and Necromancer and Magblade, but not a whole lot above it. They just don't have the healing and the kite ability of the other classes to belong in the B tier. They don't have movement. Their healing isn't as good from an outnumbered situation. Magcrow does have amazing burst in nuking large amounts of people, and so in other environments they are going to be very, very powerful. In a solo setting, I don't think they're as good. I think they're still bottom tier. They're very tanky, they're very tough to kill, but if you know what a Boneyard synergy is, typically more often than not you can avoid it, so some of their burst is very delayed. So that's why they're at the C tier. Magic and Nightblade is at the bottom tier because they don't have a burst heal. If you take a bunch of damage, you're in execute range, you don't have that ability to get back to full, although you do have some kite ability via Shadow Image, which does allow them to stay alive long enough to get burst. All of their burst is single target, so if you're fighting a 1v5, you're not going to get the nuke on kills the way some of these other classes can. You know, they don't have that AoE cleave capability to just delete health bars, and so I think Magic and Nightblade is the worst for solo PvP for that reason. Just slightly below Magic and Necromancer because, at least with Magic and Necromancer, if everything lines up, you can get some pretty fun clips in like a 1v5, 1v6, whatever. I don't think you can pull that off with a stand-up Magic and Nightblade. So nothing super bad. I wouldn't put anything in the D tier, like everything you can X with. Some classes are just a lot harder than others. So those are my tiers. Let me know to you guys. Not tiers as in crying tears. Those are my ranks of the classes. My crying tears will come later when you guys all insult me and make fun of my class rankings. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.